Well, thank you everyone for joining us today, or for those of you who might be watching this after the fact. We are going to make you fall in love, hopefully, with Viva Engage and talk about some of the big announcements that came out just yesterday. We're going to just do some introductions as we do at the beginning of all of our webinars. Ryan, do you want to just introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Ryan Keller. I've been with Pait Group for coming up on 7 years now. Been spending some time in the branding and design space for longer than I can even remember now at this point, and so do work with modern workplace strategizing.
Yes, he is our branding and design extraordinaire. I am Kat Weichsel. My full name is Katrin, but everyone calls me Kat. I am the modern workplace consultant at Pait, and I have been working with SharePoint and Microsoft products and technologies for about 18 years. I was an intranet manager, and I'll actually be talking a lot about that today in terms of how we used Yammer. But I also am now a consultant and really enjoy training and just sharing my love of Microsoft 365 technologies all around, including Yammer. I'm definitely considered, I guess, the Yammer enthusiast at Pait Group. And pretty soon you'll hear that I'm going to have to stop saying that and start saying something else.
Yeah, big
So,
changes, huh?
yeah, big changes. All right. So, first, I just want to talk about what Viva Engage is. Why does this sound so familiar when we start hearing people talking about Viva Engage? They're saying things like, oh, it's enterprise social, but isn't that what Yammer's supposed to be? And then maybe you hear some people saying, oh, Viva Engage is just Yammer in Teams. Isn't that what the communities app was supposed to be? You can see that there is reason for confusion. A lot of people have been confused as new names come out, new apps pop up. What does this all mean? And we are here to help clarify that. And Microsoft made a big step forward yesterday in their announcement to really help clarify this and stop all of that confusion. So really what Viva Engage is, last year you started hearing about Viva Engage, and it was intended to be the kind of replacement rebranding of the Communities app in Teams. So the Communities app, for those who were using it or were familiar with it, was, and I guess still is right now, this app that you can add in Teams that gets you into your organization's Yammer environment. And that just brought that whole community experience directly into Teams. So it was just nice, easy access through a button on the left rail. Then I think Microsoft was talking more and more about, like, we got Viva. This just really lends itself to the whole purpose of Viva, the whole goal of, what we want Viva to be for people. So it made sense to kind of have this get absorbed into that Viva family. And I think that's, I don't work for Microsoft. I don't know exactly, what the discussions were around this, but in general, it seems to make sense that they started saying, okay, we've got to start looking at rebranding all of this, bringing this together, making this clear for folks. So yesterday, they made the official announcement that indeed Viva Engage is Yammer and essentially will replace Yammer, the brand. So by the end of this year, Yammer will be no more as a brand, as that label. It's all going to be called Viva Engage. And that should really help avoid all the confusion we've been seeing around this whole product. So right now what's happening is the Yammer mobile apps, if you happen to use Yammer on your phone, whether it's iOS or Android, they both have apps for Yammer. Those in March, next month, are going to actually be rebranded, and they will be called Viva Engage. So you won't see the Yammer brand there anymore. Same thing's going to happen to the app in Teams. If it hasn't already, if you're using the Communities app in Teams, you're going to notice that will be rebranded to Viva Engage as well. And then by the end of the year, even in the browser, any experience, any way that you currently engage with Yammer, you will now only be seeing Viva Engage. So I'm really hoping that's going to clear up a lot of confusion. The biggest problem for me is I have to retrain my brain because I'm so used to saying Yammer. So that's going to be the hardest part for me, I think. So in our love theme, and I am wearing, if you're joining us late, I'm donning my lovely heart ears here, my headband that a friend bought me. I'm trying to celebrate the day. This is Valentine's Day. So we are your date for Valentine's Day, at least for lunchtime. So we are going to talk about this love theme throughout today. Now, a lot of us can't really afford or maybe don't want to jump in and pay extra fees, extra licensing fees for things to get new features. So what do all of these changes and announcements mean for the rest of us who just really can't shell out additional money for any kind of additional license? As I was saying, it's really the big news is about the rebranding. So what's new in terms of the brand is that you will be able to start calling this Yammer thing Viva Engage by the end of the year. No matter what you're talking about, it's all going to be Viva Engage. As far as new features go, there's nothing necessarily that's rolling out right now that's new for the rest of us, but things are pretty new that maybe you haven't started exploring yet. So those are storylines and stories. Storylines were rolled out the end of last year, and so you may have started seeing those if you were in your Yammer environment or you're in, communities, app, and teams. You would have started to see potentially these storylines for the individual profiles for yourself and for other people in your organization. And then stories have been in public preview and I think are still technically in preview. So you have to kind of opt into that. You have to have that set up and as an option in your organization, and then you would start seeing the ability to create stories. That's going to be generally available next month. So soon you won't have to opt in as a preview. You will be able to start just creating stories. I think one of the things I was reading, and I've been doing a lot of reading in the past 24 hours since these announcements just came out. So one of the things that I did read about stories and storylines, you will have, apparently it's not available yet, but one of the things I was reading, Microsoft is planning to make it possible for you to control through, I think, Active Directory security groups who can and cannot have storylines. Right now, like if you have it turned on, everybody except for guests in your tenant will have storylines, but I think their plans are to enable organizations to control that. But anyway, those are the new things that are really generally available to anyone with a Microsoft 365 license. So that's not a whole lot on the list of what's new, but it's a big change. It's a big shift, I think, for Microsoft to finally, after what is it, 10 years or 11 years since they bought the company Yammer?
Like it's been a while.
It's been a really long time to say, okay, we are changing the name. So yeah, it's gonna be hard to adapt, I think, to the new name.
Calling it Yammer Engage.
I know. We'll see what happens there. I know Yam Jams are not going to be a thing anymore. What we're going to call them. So I did a screenshot and I did put in these screenshots the date because, as we know, things really change in the Microsoft world. So this is a point in time. Who knows what this is going to look like in another couple of months or next year. But right now, when you go to the plan pricing page, you'll see that Viva Engage for the general Microsoft 365 license would include things that we are already using. If you use Yammer today, these are things you're very familiar with. These features continue to be available to you, and you are not going to be losing any of those features. You won't have to pay more for any of those existing features. And then again, what I was mentioning before, the newer things that you may not have explored just yet, but are very much part of the Yammer brand. I'm going to feel so tongue-tied by the end of today. Like, should I say Yammer or should I start saying Viva Engage? But those storylines and stories are also included with that license. So, do you have some extra money? Do you want to explore some more features? When you can afford that splurge or, go all in, at least for some licenses, not necessarily that you have to get everyone the Viva Suite license, but, if you wanted to explore what is included in that Viva Suite, we're going to talk briefly about those because as you can see, there are a lot of new things when you have gone in and purchased the Viva Suite. Yesterday's big announcements were that they were rolling out all of these key things over the next month or so. I think just went straight into being generally available yesterday. And then I think a couple of these are rolling out within the next month. But they have all kinds of features that you can start to explore and take advantage of if you have that additional license. So it's the storyline announcements are more for leaders. So, anyone on a storyline can post general types of, discussions and questions, things like that. But storyline announcements enable some additional features for kind of broadcasting and targeting messages from leaders or people who have been delegated the task of posting on behalf of a leader. So that's going to have some additional capabilities there. This thing called Leadership Corner is something that everyone can go in and see in Viva Engage when they have the Viva Suite. And it's really meant to go to a place to see what's going on with leadership. Those leaders in your organization, especially ones that are most relevant to you, maybe, especially if you're at a large organization, the people who are designated as your leaders and in that chain of command, I guess, it will know based on who you are, what to show you, what leaders matter to you or mean something to you in your role, and what they've been sharing, whether it's through their storylines or community posts that they have posted. So instead of going to just general communities and seeing what's going on and what's being shared, this is really a place to see what's going on with leadership specifically. And related to that, Ask Me Anything events are another kind of new feature. I am curious to see more about this. This is meant to be a way to, and I see it somewhat similar to, what has historically been considered a yam jam, these events that can span a period of time. So if you have a global organization, you have people in lots of different time zones, and you have an Ask Me Anything event, you can really engage with your colleagues across the world in different time zones and have this thing open for hours or even days for this specific event and really have this great community of sharing, moderated question and answer. And so there are some features around that, and that actually connects in with Leadership Corner. So if leaders are hosting these AMAs, those would be posted in the Leadership Corner. So they have just a lot of aggregated information and resources when you get this Viva Suite that are not baked into the standard product that we all know and love. There are ways to do a lot of these things, but you would have to kind of DIY it a bit, like set up a moderated community and do some things that this just kind of comes out of the box. I'm very curious to explore how some of these work. Campaigns are social campaigns. So if you think of an initiative that maybe a leader is pushing and they want to get engagement around that campaign, there can be a special campaign hashtag. There can be goals that are set up, and there's a page for the campaign. People can come and engage and ask questions. There's a tracker if you have trackable goals, all kinds of things around specific campaigns. And then related to that, and all of these things actually are advanced analytics. So really rich analytics around these different components. So you could go in and see specific analytics information on a campaign and what the engagement is. Just a lot of cool stuff with all of these features. Now, Answers in Viva is the last one of this list that they were really talking about yesterday. These kind of main rollouts that are hitting the Viva Suite customers this month and next. Answers is the only one that I've seen mentioned where this comes with the Viva Topics license. So even if you didn't purchase the whole Viva suite and you are only purchasing licenses for Viva Topics, you will get Answers in Viva, and that shows up as a tab in Viva Engage as well. Answers is very cool in that, and we're going to explore the basics that everybody gets, which is, the question post and the ability to post a question and then have people respond. You can upvote answers. You can mark one the best answer. That's all basic functionality that's already inside of Viva Engage. Answers uses AI and knows who you're signed in as and who you're connected to and what your interests are, and who knows how they come up with all of these algorithms. But essentially, you can go to the Answers tab in Viva Engage and see questions that have been shared that are most relevant to you, maybe questions that you would probably know the answer to or you might want to engage with. Lots of AI behind the scenes in this Answers feature, and it works with Viva Topics as well to really kind of pull together specific topics and questions and answers around those topics. So lots and lots of feature-rich rollouts that were announced yesterday with the Viva suite. I have read that the native mode in Yammer has to be turned on. That you have to be basically in native mode, I should say, in order to take advantage of, I think, most, if not all, of these features that were announced. And so I provided a link just so you could see, if you're not familiar with that, if you want to make sure that your organization's already using native mode, then you can go in there to learn more and check on that. If you've been using Yammer for a very long time, there is a chance that you might still be kind of in classic Yammer and not switched over to native mode. So you'll definitely want to look into that before trying to take advantage of any of these features. And then that same screenshot, suddenly that column is very, very empty. That is the column for Microsoft 365 licenses that you're seeing that has all of that blank empty space here. That's because these features are all part of that Viva Suite license. And again, some of this may change over time, who knows, but right now, as of yesterday, this is what you get in addition to all the basic functionality when you have the Viva Suite. So this is just kind of a summary of what I was just describing with the answers, the campaigns, all of those things. I wanted to spend very little time, honestly, talking about those add-on cost features, because I come from a background where I came from a not-for-profit organization, so we did not usually have the luxury of spending money on additional licenses to get features like these. I like to show people mostly what they can get with the basic license that they already have, and there is so much that you get. So it's nice to celebrate that and talk about that. I fell in love, not to be corny, but I fell in love with Yammer many, many, many years ago. And so part of this really is just to talk about, what you can do with what comes already with your Microsoft 365 license. I did want to honor the fact that we had this big announcement yesterday, and there are so many more things if you can afford to get the additional Viva Suite license. But let's talk about what's really there for everyone. And Ryan, feel free to pipe in for any of this stuff with whatever commentary or experience you have with it.
Just the peanut gallery today.
So I think I am going to take this off. I actually feel the little hearts bouncing around on my head, so it's driving me a little bonkers. I celebrated Valentine's Day enough already, but so back to our theme again, and falling in love. There's a lot that we are familiar with inside of that, that Yammer that we've known and loved for many, many years. Group is what Yammer is all about communities, sharing with people across an organization. So there are so many things that you can do as a group, and you've been doing probably for a very long time. So some of these features you may not know about if you haven't actually used Yammer before, but if you have, you hopefully are familiar with all of these. And we'll look at these because I'm going to pull up and demo an environment. But by default, when you go into a community, you can post a discussion, you can post a question, you can, if you've asked the question or if you're an administrator, you can mark what the best answer is. You can upvote, which was a feature that was just added in the past year and a half or so. That's really, I like a lot for crowdsourcing ideas. You can put a question out there and then people can chime in and then they can vote on each other's responses. And you can really bubble up like, okay, what are people interested in? What are people thinking is the best idea or what have you. So really neat features that are just kind of baked right in to that question type inside of Yammer. Reactions are a great way to kind of share how you're feeling, and the reactions that are inside Yammer are different than the ones that we see inside of Teams. So we have like a celebrate and some, other types of reactions that are kind of fun and specific to this environment for our communities. Traditionally, Yammer, now Viva Engage, has been very inclusive, mainly because it goes across the organization. So if we think of teams, we think of individual groups of people, a department or a project team, or maybe like one-on-one chats or group chats, people that you know and you work with regularly. You can certainly share with them. You can, have conversations, you can share praise, and it's kind of within that little bubble. Yammer has been so inclusive because it is meant to be across your organization. These communities generally are set up as public and therefore they are open to anyone in the organization. That means that your span is so much greater. If you ask a question, people you've never even met or heard of, you've never worked with, could see your question and answer you. So it really opens up your world, especially in very large global organizations. I think it's really powerful. It goes across those silos that we see so much. And I put inclusive even in reactions. Yammer was ahead of even Teams when it came to adding some inclusive features. The skin tone option in reactions came first in Yammer before Teams kind of jumped on board and had some inclusive emojis. So Yammer has always been about being very inclusive and really reaching across the organization, making everyone feel valued and heard. And then one of the features that I've always appreciated, I had a whole webinar and a blog post on why I, love Teams, or why I loved Yammer, and why I still felt like Yammer had some really cool features over Teams. One of those that still is true today is web parts. There are actual web parts to bring in content from Yammer, bring in conversations, bring in polls that you might have posted or praise inside of a SharePoint page, so your intranet can become rich, even if people aren't going out to Yammer through the browser, through the app, through Teams, through the Viva Engage app. They can still get it right from a SharePoint page. And that's something you can't do with Teams conversations. You can't bring those into a SharePoint page and expose those on your intranet. So I've always thought that was very cool. And then just other things like, again, conversations that you have inside of Yammer, you can move them. That's something that I heard for the longest time in Teams. People would say like, oh, I started in this team. It actually belongs over here. Or it's in this channel and I want to move it to this channel. And Yammer has had that option all along. They also have the ability to close down conversations. So if you wanted to have a rich discussion about a specific topic, and maybe you wanted someone monitoring that for a while, and then at a certain point in time, it's like, okay, we've discussed this enough, it's done, you want to close it down, there is this option to close a conversation. You can even post a message saying, this conversation has been closed because of such and such, and then move on. And you still retain it. You can see the whole history, the whole discussion, but it's stopped and you're able to move on. So these are just some of the features that we've had available for these communities, for our groups to really appreciate inside of Yammer, and of course then through the app and Teams. So the newer things that really they've been focusing on is, okay, we've always accommodated groups. We've always accommodated communities of people, whether it's around an interest or, maybe we want to have, a specific initiative and there's a community around that initiative. Now there's an option to really let people get to know you as an individual in the organization. So the communities have always been for groups to engage. Stories and storylines are really about the individual employee. So let's take a look at some of the storyline stuff. Storyline, for those who haven't really explored this yet, are where you can post things about yourself. So unlike the community where you post about an interest to a particular audience, etc., this is really just about you. So you have your own storyline. You can share things from your own perspective, whether it's your ideas, interests, what you're working on, what you do for fun. Depends on what kind of part of you want to share within your organization. So this is much more of an individual platform. So it's like your social media accounts, but instead of maybe your Instagram that you have private and only your friends, can follow you and see what you're posting, the audience for Storyline, again, this is today. Remember, I mentioned that they are looking at even controlling, I guess, who can have Storyline and use Storyline. But right now, the audience is anyone in your organization, whether or not you know them. So we'll look a little bit more specifically at those details, but really whatever you share on your storyline, you need to be comfortable saying, this is who I am within my organization, and I don't care who in the organization sees this content. Someone can go into a community and they'll learn a lot from what people are posting. So they might learn a lot from you if you're engaging in a lot in a specific community, but they typically are going to communities based on, if they're interested in that topic for that community, or if there are certain questions that they're interested in seeing the answers to. They come to your storyline, though, because they want to get to know you. So instead of a topic, community, this is really about you. So when you go into Storyline, this is a screenshot of what this looks like. You can see on the Storyline just posts in your home feed from other people's storylines. So if you go into Viva Engage and you go to your home feed, you're going to see posts that might be recommended for you or suggested for you, or definitely if you're following someone's feed, you will see posts that they've put on their storyline in your own feed. And my screen just locked up, so it's not letting me move forward. There we go. So one thing that you can do is actually follow people. So while you can see things maybe that might be suggested for you, since you could technically look at anyone's storyline, if you know someone that really you want to keep following, maybe there's a leader that you feel like you don't want to miss anything that they share, or they're just some colleagues that you think share really helpful information, or you just like them and you want to see more about them, you can follow them. And then when you're following, you have options to receive notifications about what they post on their storyline. And you can choose if you want to be notified through Yammer, through Teams, through email. Again, I imagine this is one of the many things that's going to be updated a bit as this evolution of Yammer going away and becoming Viva Engage is changing. So what you can post on your storyline, it'll look very similar to you as your community. So if you go into any community, you can start a new discussion, you can post a question, you can post praise, or you can post a poll. Those same options exist on your storyline. So if there's a community that makes sense for that and you want to share with that specific audience and that, whoever's engaged in that community, then certainly go, continue using the communities as you have. But if something is just really relevant for you and there's not really a community where it makes sense, you want to share this through your storyline, you can just do the same kind of thing, same types of posts, but on your own storyline. And then in addition to the typical posts that we have access to create, you can create stories. So stories are either videos or pictures that you put on your storyline. So that's a little different than obviously what you do in a community post. Obviously, in a community post, you can attach pictures and videos, but it's a very different feel. It's not that storyline feel, that Instagram type feel. So for stories, there is a limit on the video messages you can create. They can only be 3 minutes long. So that's, I think, very intentional and very smart, because you don't want someone long-winded going on and on and on and trying to post something on their story. Stories are meant to just engage and move on. And so that 3-minute limit is plenty of time to get out, kind of update on a project or share just a friendly message out with those who are interested in following you. Especially if you're a leader, that's a great way to put out kind of quick communication through a video message. And then likewise, you can upload pictures and videos. The videos, again, that you upload also have that 3-minute limit. So I would recommend, as far as sharing in a story, because some people might look at this and say, this is work, why would I be sharing these kinds of things at work? Well, instead of thinking of it like your Instagram, where it might be all personal stuff, work can make a lot of sense when, you're creating a short video tutorial of something. Maybe, maybe in your role, you're typically helping people learn how to use a particular tool or software that's available in the organization. You could create some kind of quick tutorials through your storyline to share that information out, and people could follow you and then stay up to date on these tips. That certainly is one great way of using it. Again, leaders in particular, but also just people who might be leading a specific project or are in charge of an important role at work, they could do video messages to share updates, exciting work announcements. And then again, if you are open to doing more personal stuff and sharing a little more of yourself at work and who you are even in your personal life, then you can upload photos of, let's say, your family vacation. I know at my last job, we used Yammer a lot for the personal side of our people. And we had a photo of the week that we actually posted through Yammer, and then we surfaced on our intranet homepage. And it was a great way for people to get to know their colleagues and that different side of them. They would, see pictures of a child's birthday party or of a really fun family vacation. And it would get people talking, maybe who didn't even know each other or work together. So, doing the same thing through stories, that then again, you might have reach where people who don't know you might come across a suggested post with, your storyline and start engaging with you. So it's a great way to get to know other people in the organization and share more of yourself. So when you go in to create a new story, it actually gives suggestions of what you can share. So you like this, this kind of walks you through a 3-page process. Share an update, an experience, an idea. It gives you ideas about what you might want to start sharing. And then you're faced with 2 options: record. So record that video message for up to 3 minutes, or just upload an existing photo or video that you want from your device. When you have stories on your storyline, this is my actual storyline in our environment at Pait. And so I had posted some different things. I did the first time I played with stories after I got the preview on November 18th, I created a little video recording. I had my dog barking for dinner in the background. And then I posted some photos and created a video message for the holidays and things like that, that were just kind of fun and silly and personal. really for me, I was just kind of testing out stories and seeing how this worked. But this is what it winds up looking like. So when you go to your storyline and when others go to your storyline, they can actually see the past stories that you have shared, whether they're the photos or the videos. Some of the basic details about this. These things stay in a carousel, and we'll look at that in the demo. The carousel of stories stays up for 30 days. So things will drop off the carousel after that period of time, but they stay on your storyline really until you delete them. So you can purposely go back and delete things if you want to, or they can just stay on indefinitely. This is something I tried to look into, and Brian, we're going to need to investigate this a little more because I could not figure out where this was in my OneDrive. So they say when you're reading, and like I said, I've been reading a lot about this, where is the content stored when you create stories? It says because they are personal. If you're in a community and you store things there, they're going to be stored in the SharePoint site. This is saying that stories are stored in your OneDrive, which makes total sense. I mean, if you're in Teams chat and you share a file, it gets stored on your OneDrive because this is just like a one-on-one conversation. There's no connected team to put things in, so it gets saved on your OneDrive. Makes total sense that that's where they're stored, but I'm telling you, I went to look for them and I couldn't find where they were.
Nowhere to be found.
So it may be hidden right now. And I looked both in my personal one and then in my demo tenant, and I could not for the life of me figure it out. So that's a question I have for Microsoft. I'm going to keep looking into that, and maybe I'll share an update when I find out the answer. But it does make total sense that, since these are your photos and your videos, that they would get stored on your OneDrive. Makes total sense, but I cannot find them. The Teams chat files have a folder that gets created the first time you share a file through Teams chat. That's what I was looking for, and I didn't see anything like that. So to be continued on that one, but technically that's where they're saying they're stored. As far as who can see them, again, people who choose to follow you will definitely see this, whatever you share, in their feed automatically. It'll just show up in their home feed. If they don't follow you, they may see your posts as a suggestion. Again, there's so much that I don't understand about, the algorithms that are set up by Microsoft for this kind of thing. But I assume, if you know someone who knows someone, that might boost your post in a suggestion in someone else's feed. If you have connections that are in common, or maybe you're part of the same communities, things like that, I would imagine would kind of boost what you're posting in other people's feeds if they have those kinds of connections. And then technically, though, if people want to find what you're posting, they can. Anyone in your organization can click on your profile and get into your storyline. So whatever you share on your storyline, you do want to make sure you're comfortable. If you work in a company that has hundreds of thousands of employees, I wouldn't share anything so personal like I'm about to go on vacation and my house is unlocked and I wouldn't do things like that. But, certainly share what you're comfortable sharing, but know that technically anyone in the org could see what you're sharing. And that's kind of the whole point. That gets, anyone could get to know you better. There is a note that I have read several times that guests actually do not have access to Storyline. So if you have an environment where guests can come in and they could potentially, be in your Yammer network, as long as they are not Microsoft 365 licensed accounts in your tenant, they are not going to be able to not only use Storyline themselves, but they're not going to be able to see anything on your Storyline. So it is only available to true licensed users in your network. Okay, have I made you, Ryan, are you in love with Viva Engage yet? Are you
Convinced
he's dying
me.
to play with Yammer more? And for anyone who is still not convinced, and I do, I think it's interesting. Microsoft made this announcement yesterday about the fact that truly, and Steve Gwen was already saying, Steve Gwen at Microsoft was already saying that essentially Viva Engage is Yammer. And yes, we know there's some confusion around the names and stuff, and we'll be trying to work on that and clear that up. Yesterday, they made it official and really said that the Yammer name was going away altogether. I think that's going to be great for many reasons, for, just avoiding the confusion. But there are a lot of people, and myself included, who have had a rough go with Yammer. Whether you bought into the product, not bought, because I think it was free to a certain degree anyway, before Microsoft bought it, you could kind of join it and other people in your organization could use it. We did that at my old organization. Someone started it and set invites to people. So it was like kind of this unofficial thing that people were playing around with. Then it died off because it didn't really take off and nobody was managing it. Then Microsoft bought it, made it available to all of us through our subscription. And there were some rough starts because, I think people didn't really know what to do with it. And so some people might play around with it, and then you'd get random invites or random emails and you didn't know what this thing was, and it just seemed like noise. There's been a bad reputation. We've talked to clients who are like, please don't talk to me about Yammer. I just not interested. So there has been, unfortunately, even though there are so many cool things that you can do with it, there has been a bad reputation for a lot of folks.
That's for sure. It was always a little bit awkwardly positioned in where you put this versus a conversation in Teams, and Teams really kind of muddied the waters for Yammer. But I think this, especially moving forward with Viva Engage and really rebranding it, I think is going to go a long way to help push that engagement a little bit further. I think it definitely has a place in the organization.
I agree. And I think getting rid of that name and all the history with it. I know some people will just be like, look, it's a name change. I still know what it is. That's fine. But for a lot of people, kind of coming to it fresh and be like, oh, this is part of Viva Engage. Like, okay, I'm on board. I think it's going to open up some opportunities, hopefully, for those who might have just had a bad taste in their mouth for the Yammer word. Maybe they'll be a little more open to this, especially, if they do have the ability to go with the Viva suite and really take advantage of things that are truly brand new features. That I think there's a lot to that. But I want to show you some things just live in a demo, and then give you some resources so that you can explore this yourselves. So I'm going to show you just a little bit of what this looks like. I am in a demo tenant here, so I'm actually going straight through the browser to Yammer, which again, by the end of the year, sometime this year, this will be rebranded and we'll be saying Viva Engage as well. You'll be seeing Viva Engage in the app launcher. All of those things are going to be rebranded. But for right now, it still says Yammer. When I come in to the home feed in this demo tenant, Storyline is enabled for everyone. So you're going to see the stories in your home feed. So I'm in as Megan right now. She sees stories here. She can create her own story, or she can look at stories she's already got. And then notice that she has Nestor here and his stories. And then this says suggested for Diego stories. So she can actually click on this and see what Nestor has shared in his stories. And if this is what we were referring to as the carousel. So if he had multiple pictures from the past 30 days or videos, he could, you could click through the carousel and see all of his stuff. Now this is switching over to Diego because Nestor only had the one image, but this had also in the stories shown that Diego was suggested. Notice when I'm over here on Nestor, I don't see a follow option because Megan's already following Nestor. So that's why it was kind of the first set of stories that she saw. But Diego was suggested. She's not actually following Diego, but she got this suggestion. And so she gets to actually see, oh, this guy Diego posted this. This is kind of cool. Maybe I want to follow him. And then she could just click on this. And now when he starts posting more to his storyline, she'll actually be sure to get those. Because again, small organization right here in this demo tenant, if this is a massive organization, you're not going to see everybody's stories. You're going to see the stories that people you follow and then ones that are relevant and suggested to you. So in this case, she was able to see the suggested one. And then I think probably as she refreshes now that she's following him, it's no longer going to say suggested. So she can also look at her own stories that she's posted. She only has one up here as well from the past 30 days and the carousel. she can go ahead and click create to actually start setting up her own news story. And this is what we saw in that screenshot, that you really have these two main options. When you hit record, it's going to try and look for a camera. It's going to probably get confused for me right now because I'm already using my camera for this webinar. But then I have basic options that are coming in from Stream. I can record screen. If you've played around with screen recording at all, this should look very familiar to you. But this is a 3-minute limit, unlike the typical stream recording limit of 15 minutes. These for your timeline are just limited to 3 minutes, but you have all kinds of options that you can go in and play with and record a story, or you can just upload a photo and then it lets you pick from a selection of pictures, photos, pictures, videos, whatever you might have on your local device. Everything there has to be 3-minute limit. And so it just kind of walks you through that. So I'm going to jump out of that and go back in and show you. That's really the new stuff. That's really the storyline and the stories. So if she goes in, like, let's say she were just looking through here and maybe she sees a post from somebody. She doesn't know this person, so she clicks on this. If he had anything on his storyline, she would be able to see it here, even if this is someone she's never met before, doesn't know anything about him. And then if she really liked what she saw and she was interested in following more, she could follow. And again, for people that you're following, so like Diego here that she follows, when she goes into his profile, she can see that he's following him. And then there are those notification options that we were showing in that one screenshot. So she can choose to unfollow, or she could choose to say, I don't care about getting an email notification, but I want to get it, notifications about his storyline posts in Yammer and in Teams. So things like that. And she could look at his stories over here as well. So that's the storyline, new stuff. That's pretty cool. Much more like what you've been seeing lately, on Facebook, and then certainly what you have access to see on Instagram if you use any of that. But for the organization, I guess I've read some people saying, this is probably more like how you would use LinkedIn. The kinds of things you're comfortable posting on LinkedIn, you might want to put in here because this is more business related. However, you might not be comfortable sharing personal stuff on LinkedIn because that's, potentially a lot of strangers could see that. This is, again, restricted to your organization. So maybe you're a little bit more comfortable opening up and sharing some more personal stuff on your storyline. And just to highlight for anyone joining or watching this who has not really been a Yammer user, I do want to make that case for why this is a great thing to consider, especially now that it's been really adopted and embraced by the Viva family. You've got this easy access inside of Teams. Really consider using this and making this available, promoting this, having someone planning out how your company is going to use Viva Engage. Use these communities. I mean, there's so much power in what you can do. So I'm going to show you, let's see, Ask HR is one of the communities we have in here. And this was a question type. So you can see that's, whenever you're posting, whether you're on your storyline or in a community, you can post a discussion, question, praise, or poll. This was posted as a question. And it was, let's look for new ideas for employee benefits. What can people suggest? And let's see what's most popular. And then when people started replying, others could start upvoting on the replies. So this person said, time off for volunteering, that'd be a great benefit. And 4 different people went in and upvoted that. They really liked that. Then Pet Friendly Office came in and 3 people upvoted that. And so it reshuffles as people upvote. And then they were able to, when this period of time was over and they were looking at, what could we potentially implement, they marked the best answer. Maybe HR is now examining this and they're saying, okay, this was definitely the most popular. Obviously, this is small scale, test environment, but you could do something like this on a massive scale at a company. And then if you are using something like Viva Engage, the Viva Suite with the Viva Suite licenses, there's, even more you could do around campaigns, just lots and lots of cool features. But even with the basics, you can do quite a bit out of the box with basic functionality inside of Yammer. I love the question type, and when they introduced upvoting, I was so excited because I just thought this was huge. My old company used a third-party product for ideation, and of course it had way more features, but all we used it for really was putting out campaign and collecting ideas and then having people vote on them. This is the free way to do that exact same thing inside of Microsoft 365 with that basic Microsoft 365 license. So if, considering the limited way we use that ideation product, we could have really just used Yammer, honestly, to do the same thing had upvoting been around at that time.
Way to crowdsource responses and information.
Yeah, I mean, it's so cool and so simple. Yeah, so I can't say enough good things about what we've always had and what they have continued to add to inside of Yammer. And so now that it's going to be Viva Engage, and they are giving so many more opportunities. And let me just pull up some of these things while we're here. So just to show you for the Viva Suite stuff, this is one of the many announcements that came out yesterday. And so this I recommend it, and this is in our resources. If you go through, this talks about all of the things that you get with Leadership Corner, and really gives you screenshots around these new features like the storyline announcements that I mentioned, the Leadership Corner, Ask Me Anything events, all of these things that come with the Viva Suite that are rolling out, the campaigns. This is that thing I was talking, they have a goal tracker. They have all kinds of things around the campaigns. The analytics are really cool. You have personal analytics, audience analytics, campaign analytics, answers analytics, and then global answers analytics. So there are all kinds of ways to do deep dive and really see how things are being used in your environment if you go ahead with the Viva Suite. Sentiment analytics, and then the answers is really cool. I am going to, as I go back to my deck here, I'm going to show you. So first of all, if you want to try out Storyline, you have to make sure that your enterprise network enforces Office 365 identity. So you can go to this resource here to learn more about that. If you have any power over that through your organization, just make sure that this is set up properly so that you can enable Storyline. And then here are just some ideas for you for creating a new video or adding a photo to your Storyline to test it out. And we do have resources specific to, like I said, my love of Yammer that goes way, way back. I wrote up this guide to leveraging Yammer. And so, don't mind the name. The name is the main thing that's changing. The functionality is still very much there. So you can go and check out this white paper that I wrote up. It's got all kinds of ideas from my history as an intranet manager and promoting use of Yammer within our company, getting that content surfaced on our SharePoint intranet pages, all of that, lots of ideas around ways that you can use that to get employees engaged in this white paper. And then we've got some different videos and blog posts here as well that are still quite relevant today. These are features that rolled out a while back, but they are still there and still really, really nice to use. So feel free to go through those resources. And then for the guys who really know what's happening because they're making it happen, there are people you can follow who are at Microsoft working every day on rolling things out for Viva Engage. So I put just some links to their LinkedIn profiles. They're also on Twitter, I think almost all of them. And then these are things that really came out yesterday. So this Intrazone podcast was released yesterday on Viva Answers specifically, but Steve Gwen and Michael Holstay were the two guests on this podcast. So it's definitely worth a listen to go into the IntraZone. I love the IntraZone podcast in general. Mark Cashman is awesome. And so I recommend subscribing to that and listening to that whenever you can. But this episode was particularly good as they did a deep dive into Viva Answers and what, what some of the other announcements were as well, the future of Yammer and Viva Engage, but definitely talking mostly about Viva Answers. Check out the Viva Engage product page. The Viva blog has posts. So yesterday there was a new post from the Viva blog and then a different post, and they overlapped, but they also had some unique things in them. So I recommend checking them all out if you're interested in this topic. The Yammer blog, which I'm imagining is going to be renamed soon or maybe swallowed into the Viva blog. But right now it's still separate, and there is a separate post on the announcements. So check all that out. Those screenshots I took were from the Viva pricing info page, so you can visit that here. So all of these resources are good to check out. There is also a Viva Engage Ask Me Anything, which again, if you're here today and you're talking to people who don't work at Microsoft, you really want to come, I think, to this Ask Me Anything, which is hosted by Microsoft. And so the experts who have the insider's knowledge are going to be hosting this specific Ask Me Anything on Viva Engage on February 23rd. So there's the link for that if you want to sign up for that. Do we have any questions, Ryan, in the chat?
We do not, but if you have any, feel free to paste them in the chat window real quick.
And while you do that, if you have any questions, feel free to share them. But also, since we are talking about Viva, we can't leave you without talking about the other free meaning you have a Microsoft 365 license apps that are part of Viva, which is Viva Insights and Viva Learning. Again, just like Viva Engage, there are parts of those that are only going to come with the additional license for the Viva suite. But then there are things that are available to anyone with the Microsoft 365 license. And so we will, once again, focus mainly on those things that do come with that license, but we will touch on some of the extras as well.
Let's make sure to join that one. That'll be fun.
Yeah.
We'll wrap this up. And if you missed our first video in this series, we do have it on our YouTube channel. So you can always check that out as well to kind of get an intro to Viva and Viva connections.
That one was incredible. Ryan walked you completely through the Viva Connections experience. He did an amazing job, and yeah, that's one to definitely check out.
I just wanted to make sure we did a nice series on Viva, since it's kind of the new exciting thing for intranets these days. Make sure everyone is aware of what's happening, and make sure to look us up if you need any help setting up your intranet or adding Viva or any of the fun stuff we looked at today. I'm sure Kat would be more than happy to walk you through getting your Viva Engage going.
Yeah, we get very excited about this stuff. So Brian could get you all set up with Viva Connections. I could talk your ear off about Viva Engage. Yeah. Well, this recording will also go onto our YouTube channel. So we look forward to seeing you on March 23rd for our last of the Viva series. And thanks so much to everybody who joined today.
Yeah, thanks so much.